Some people will do anything for fame. For these celebs, nothing is off the table, not even lying about having cancer. Former NBC Nightly News anchor and father of girl star Allison Williams, Brian Williams was lauded for his brave journalistic efforts during the Iraq War. In his heyday, he watched the Berlin Wall fall, survived a rocket-propelled grenade attack, and flew into Baghdad with Navy SEALs. Or so we thought. It turns out that Williams lied about all of the above and had everyone fooled. In 2015, sleuths started to notice holes in Williams' tales of heroism. He had long recounted a story of witnessing a grenade attack on a helicopter when he was reporting on the Iraq War in 2003. Over the years, his story began to change. The most notable modification occurred in 2007 when he suggested that he was actually flying in the helicopter that came under attack, as opposed to merely witnessing the onslaught. Then in 2013, he appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman and stated,
"2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47.
Contrary to his claims, Williams was in an entirely different helicopter, one that followed the target. Having been caught in a lie, he was forced to retract the story and apologize. He said he made a mistake in remembering the story before admitting that he was not in the helicopter that was targeted. He was suspended for 6 months as a result of his lies. With his twinkly blue eyes and enigmatic smile, Hollywood veteran Paul Newman charmed his way into audiences' hearts, but he long maintained that his heart only belonged to his wife of half a century, Joanne Woodward. In an interview with Playboy, he claimed that he was utterly faithful to Woodward, famously declaring, "I have steak at home, why go out for hamburger?" But Newman devotees had their hearts broken when it was revealed that he wasn't the wholesome family man he appeared to be. According to the documentary, The Last Movie Stars, which explores Newman and Woodward's marriage, the former was far from faithful. The film alleges that Woodward hated her husband's now iconic quote, believing that it reduced her to a piece of meat. What's more, Woodward grew tired of Newman's womanizing. The actor reportedly cheated on his wife with alarming frequency. One of the actor's reported lovers was journalist Nancy Bacon, with whom he had an 18-month affair. All the while, Newman kept up the facade of being a monogamous, one-woman man, even as his pals joked that Paul may not go out for hamburger, but he sure goes out for bacon. The cheating was particularly hard on the actor's children. As his daughter Eleanor recalled,
"I found a book that was written by somebody he'd had an affair with.
At one time the most revered figure in professional cycling history, Lance Armstrong was an American hero. He was also a cycling ambassador and charity fundraiser as the founder of the Lance Armstrong Foundation, having survived late-stage testicular cancer in his youth. Throughout his career, Armstrong always stated with the utmost conviction that he abstained from performance-enhancing drugs, and his mesmerizing athletic performance was attributable to his sporting prowess alone. In 2005, he appeared at a deposition to testify that he had never doped. He asserted,
"When I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs."
But in 2012, Armstrong was banned for life by the global governing body of cycling, and his Tour de France medals were all confiscated after an investigation concluded that he'd been cheating. The following year, he gave an interview with Oprah Winfrey in which he admitted that he lied. However, investigators said that Armstrong had also outright lied to Winfrey when he claimed that he stopped doping in 2005. Investigations show that Armstrong was still doping from 2005 onwards. By 2015, he came clean and admitted to doping, telling the BBC that given the opportunity, he'd likely cheat again. He confessed, "If you take me back to 1995, when doping was completely pervasive, I would probably do it again." Of all the things one can lie about, it doesn't get much lower than claiming to have survived 9/11. Comedic actor Steve Rannazzisi did just that. In 2009, the comedian told Mark Maron that he was working at Merrill Lynch at the time. He stated, "I was there, and then the first tower got hit, and we were like jostled all over the place." While the public believed his tales of escaping certain death to be true, Rannazzisi stunned fans when he confessed that he'd made the whole thing up. The New York Times noticed inconsistencies in the actor's story and began an investigation. Soon, he had no choice but to come clean. He tweeted, "It wasn't true. I was in Manhattan, but working in a building in Midtown, and I was not at the Trade Center on that day." At the time of his shocking confession, he was set to star in the Comedy Central special Breaking Dad, but the network expressed their disappointment in the promising young comic. Rationalizing why he lied, Rannazzisi attributed his tall tales to immaturity. He tweeted, "More than anything, I've wished that, with silence, I could somehow erase a story told by an immature young man. It only made me more ashamed." For years, Hilaria Baldwin really had us thinking she had Spanish heritage. A 2012 Vanity Fair Spain profile describes her as a native of Mallorca who loves flamenco and paella, and whose family couldn't pronounce the name of her new husband, Alec Baldwin. She asserted, "I had to repeat it to my family 3 times. Baldwin." Alec gave an interview with David Letterman in 2013 in which he imitated his wife's accent, claiming she was from Spain.
Really? Okay, I can't wait to see you. That's going to be great. Fantastic. What time? 12 o'clock? My wife is from Spain.
But by 2020, eagle-eyed, not to mention bat-eared Twitter users started noticing discrepancies in her diction and backstory. For instance, in early interviews, she speaks with an American accent. It turns out that Hilaria is in fact Hillary Hayward Thomas, who was born in Boston to Dr. Catherine Hayward's and David Thomas. Genealogist Dr. Adina Newman told the Daily Mail that she concluded that Hilaria doesn't have a trace of Spanish ancestry. Eventually, Hilaria had to come right out and say it to Vanity Fair. "Yes, I am a white girl." Speaking to the New York Times about the trickery, she said that the situation was far more nuanced than her simply faking her heritage, insisting that she absorbed the Spanish culture in which she was raised. It's one thing to tell a little white lie at one's own discretion, but it's quite another matter entirely to lie about having a terminal illness and to put other people's lives in danger in the process. Well, that's exactly what Australian health influencer Belle Gibson did. For years, the blogger claimed that she was diagnosed with late-stage terminal brain cancer, but miraculously managed to cure the disease through healthy eating. She developed a huge Instagram following with her pseudoscientific claims, and even wrote a book, The Whole Pantry. One of Belle's former devotees told the BBC, "Chemo wasn't working for me. I said, I should come off and try clean eating." Belle was saying what she was doing was curing her cancer. It was making it better. So in 2013, Kylie decided to emulate her idol, ditching chemo and embracing the concept of wellness. There was just one problem: Gibson was a fraud. In 2015, journalists Bo Donnelly and Nick Toscano began doing some digging into Gibson's background and discovered that she'd never had cancer at all, and even lied about donating proceeds from her book to charity. Eventually, she confessed to Australian Women's Weekly that none of it was true. In 2017, she was fined $410,000 for her con. When Rebel Wilson first waltzed onto the cinematic landscape, she was a breath of fresh air, confident, funny, and unashamedly authentic.
I'm an open book.
Or so we thought. It turns out that Wilson was not only lying about her age, but her background. In 2015, Women's Day published an expose into Wilson's various supposed fabrications. The outlet alleged that Wilson lied about being several years younger than she is. At the time, she claimed to be 29 when she was actually 36. They also claimed that Wilson falsified tales of an eccentric, impoverished background when she in fact had a privileged childhood. An ex-classmate admitted about Wilson, "She had a very normal upper-middle-class upbringing. She's clearly got a vivid imagination. Maybe you have to tell stories to make it in Hollywood." Subsequently, Wilson launched a lawsuit against the outlet in 2017, claiming that they purposely sought to sabotage her career by publishing the story to coincide with the release of Pitch Perfect 2. She alleged that an obsessed former classmate spilled the deets to publicly shame her. The court eventually awarded Wilson $3.6 million. Regarding her decision to lie about her age, Wilson told Who magazine that ageism was to blame. Being an actress, it affects women more than men in terms of ageism and sexism. So to be called out by the press on something most sensible business-minded people would have done in my position, it was a bit hurtful. One could be forgiven for believing Jack and Meg White were siblings, the jet black hair, the pallid complexions, and the twinning wardrobes. For years, fans thought Jack and Meg were brother and sister, because that's the very image that the musical duo projected. As the cut notes, Jack would often refer to Meg as his sister during live performances. However, fans began to notice that the pair had an unusual rapport and suspected onstage chemistry, suggesting that something was surely awry with the red top twosome. Soon enough, it was revealed that the pair were in fact ex-spouses. In 2001, NME disclosed that Jack and Meg had been married for 4 years, though the duo insisted that they were brother and sister when contacted for comment. They eventually came clean, however. Rationalizing the sibling myth, Jack told Rolling Stone in 2005 that he felt the duo wouldn't be taken seriously if people knew the truth. When you see a band that is two pieces, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, you think, oh, I see. When they're brother and sister, you go, oh, that's interesting. You care more about the music, not the relationship. Whether they're trying to save their relationship by being in a band, you don't think about that with a brother and sister. He also scoffed at the notion that he and Meg were deliberately trying to deceive people. When Britney Spears first burst onto the music scene in the late 90s, she had long maintained that she was a virgin. At the time, the songstress was in a highly publicized relationship with fellow pop star Justin Timberlake and asserted that the pair had never had sex. Spears once said, "Good morals mean waiting to have sex until after you've been married." She reiterated the stance, albeit coyly, during an appearance on the British talk show The Frank Skinner Show in 2002.
I just told them, and then boom, the world's talking about it.
You're really waiting for me to change the subject now.
Yes.
Timberlake had a lot to say about Spears' virginity assertion. Speaking to radio show Star and Buck Wild, he declared that he and Britney did engage in premarital intimacy. This led Spears to backtrack on her past purity claims. In an interview with W magazine in 2003, she confirmed that she and Timberlake had sex, saying, "I've only slept with one person my whole life. It was 2 years into my relationship with Justin, and I thought he was the one, but I was wrong." Considering that Spears was a vulnerable young girl thrust into the spotlight to project an image of wholesome Christianity, it's understandable reveal why she lied. Back in 2008, Tyga appeared on the game show Bustas, which never aired, and claimed that he'd lied about his tough Compton upbringing. He boasted about growing up in the Valley, surrounded by wealth and fancy cars. He said, "Grew up not too tough, parents got a Range Rover, doing it big, not too much hard, but I'm still street. They say I'm not hood cause I stay in the Valley. They say I never been in the alley." Though many were quick to slam Tyga as a phony for lying about his troubled upbringing, he later insisted that the show was pure fiction. The rapper said that he lied during his appearance on the show and is in fact from Compton, contrary to his claims that he grew up in the Valley. In an interview with Power 106's Big Boy's Neighborhood, he clarified the comments he made on the series, attributing them to the utterances of an overzealous teen. He explained, "I'm young, I'm ambitious, I don't care. I'm getting a check for this. I'm about to be on TV. At this point in my career, I'm at a point where I worked so hard and for people to try and throw negative stuff." It was long believed that Akon had an extensive rap sheet. He claimed to have been in jail for over 3 years and served as the leader of an infamous car theft operation.
You know, like a liar.
However, an investigation by the Smoking Gun concluded that Akon had lied about his criminal past. Despite claiming to possess a criminal record that would make Tony Montana blush, he actually has just one conviction to his name, gun possession, for which he was sentenced to 3 years probation. As for leading a car theft ring, total fiction. Contrary to his claims, he was not in prison for 3 years. He wasn't even charged, let alone convicted, of the supposed car theft master plan. FBI agent Peter McFarland said, "This is bull. This guy is so phony. He's an arrogant SOB." Yep, turns out Akon's criminal history was just a con. Addressing his lies in an interview with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Akon said that he wanted his fabrications to give hope to the disaffected men he met during his extremely brief run-in with the law. Character actor Brian Dennehy was best known for his roles in First Blood and Cocoon, usually playing tough, no-nonsense characters. With his grizzled on-screen persona, it certainly wasn't hard to believe his recollections of active duty during the Vietnam War. The actor had long asserted that he served in the war and was wounded on the battlefield. In an interview with Playboy, he even went as far as to hint that he killed people in action. He claimed, "As for killing someone, anyone in combat would agree that it's pretty much accidental. You spend a considerable amount of time just trying not to be in a combat situation. You're trying to avoid coming face-to-face with anything." But he was soon dragged for being a fraud. It was revealed that Dennehy made the whole thing up. Although he served in the Marines, he never set foot in Vietnam. He admitted in 1988, "I lied about serving in Vietnam, and I'm sorry." Despite his confession, Dennehy lied again about his supposed service when speaking to the Wall Street Journal in 2007. Considering the impact of PTSD on soldiers, Vietnam in particular has had a lasting psychological effect on vets. The actor's stolen valor was especially offensive to veterans who suffered the devastating trauma of combat. In the aftermath of Me Too, Asia Argento was one of the most prominent proponents of the movement. With her passionate speeches and harrowing recollections of the abuse inflicted upon her by Harvey Weinstein, Argento was perceived as a beacon of moral certitude. That all changed, however, when a young fan came forward with his own allegations of misconduct against the star. Argento sexually assaulted actor Jimmy Bennett when he was 17 and secretly paid him $380,000. She had first met him when he was just 7. She initially denied the allegations, stating she did not have a sexual relationship with the child actor. However, she was exposed for lying when TMZ published photos of her and Bennett nude together in bed. She also appeared to admit to the inappropriate relationship in text screenshots. In a statement, Rose McGowan said that she was highly disappointed in Argento and was breaking off their friendship. McGowan revealed that her partner, Rain Dove, told her that Argento had indeed lied about the nature of her relationship with Bennett. They had been texting with Asia, and that Asia had revealed that she had indeed slept with Jimmy Bennett. Noting that Argento had been receiving nude photos of Bennett since he was just 12, McGowan condemned her friend for not telling the authorities or his parents, and for not blocking Jimmy's social media. When Empire star Jussie Smollett recalled his terrifying ordeal at the hands of Trump supporters in 2019, numerous celebs rallied in support. Smollett was supposedly attacked by 2 racists, who tied a rope around his neck and started calling him racial and homophobic slurs. In an interview with Good Morning America, the actor appeared thoroughly convincing when recalling the horrific alleged attack. He insisted throughout the interview that he was telling the truth. However, cracks began to show in Smollett's story. The first major telltale sign that something didn't add up was the actor told police he was attacked by 2 white men. The 2 men who supposedly attacked Smollett, brothers Abel and Ola Osundaro, are black. Accordingly, the city of Chicago filed a $130,000 lawsuit against the actor, claiming the crime was a hoax, something Smollett vehemently denied. The lawsuit stated, Smollett made this statement despite knowing that the Osundaro brothers are not white-skinned. Smollett purposely misled the CPD officers when, in fact, Smollett knew that his attackers were the Osundaro brothers. In 2022, Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in jail after being found guilty of faking the hate crime. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, help is available. Visit the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network website or contact RAIN's National Helpline at 1-800-656-HOPE. That's 1-800-656-4673.